Hi, welcome to a quick video on using some of the ANZ tools that we can operate to really get some three-dimensional solids. In this case, it's looking at the application of how to generate a three-dimensional solid of an advertising billboard or sign, so the volume can be determined. And really, I'm going to attempt to go through it in three quick ways, I think, for tools as that should allow for different shapes and different orientations to give a few options for the complexity required. Okay, just having a look here. We've got the sign. You could see it's been scanned with mobile mapping, so we've actually got both sides of it quite easily as the run went past. And we're going to start off just with a limit box. And we can see there. So really with the limit box in place, then we could start to move that in until we're just looking at the sign itself, and really we're not distracted by the other components that might be just adjacent to it. So we can rotate that around, get that in position nicely. And depending on what you need to capture, it looks like that's a supporting arm. So we'll come up through that. We don't need to worry too much about that one. And if we wanted to, we could actually rotate a little bit to make sure that we are really only getting that sign. Like that. Now, if you had to do a lot of these, then limit boxing each time is probably going to be reasonable. If you need to come back to it again though, it might be worth this point. I'm happy with my selection. That's everything that I need. And I'm just going to call this sign 1. Okay. So now I can actually deactivate the limit box. And I can get rid of all the other point clouds. So I don't have to work in that limit box all the time, which can just make it easier. And also if I've got to come back to it later, can make it easier too. And then you get each section of point cloud named. So it may make it better long term. All right. So to begin with, we'll go to CAD and we're just going to use rectangle. Could either be 2-point rectangle or 3-point. Let's do a 3-point. So in this case, we're just looking at where the edge of that is, and looks like it's there. 1, 2 there. Just making sure that I am actually grabbing that edge. And then this one there. Now, I've obviously made that too low. I didn't set an elevation. Should have set the elevation at the start. Let's actually undo that, redo it with the elevation. So I'm going to set its elevation to the top, and then I'll do this again. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. You can see there, because the sign's not exactly vertical or plumb, it's not hitting through the whole thing. This really depends on how accurately you need that volume, because this might be fine. So let's generate the solid from this and take a look. So we'll close out of that. We'll go to ANZ Edit. We're going to say 3D objects from polygons. This is our polygon. We're going to do depth. The depth happens to be from Now I've got to double check with this tool if it picks up depth. It does. Alternatively, just launch your measure tool and you could just go, hey, from there down to there, 1.66, and then just come back into here. But in this case, this one's been set up so that when we've got that field active, it is taking a measurement from 2 points. We don't need an offset. You may want to create BIM groups with these. It's always handy too. It just gives it another way of filtering these. So we could create one called signs, or we could create an individual group for each of these. I'm going to create one called sign, and then I'll call this one sign 1. We'll make it magenta so it's easier to work with. I'll leave the color the way it is. If you do want a particular layer, then we can also layer it here, and yeah, let's make the layer magenta as well. All right, so at the moment, there we go. Hit apply and we generate a solid. So it's just taking that exact polygon and pushing it downwards until we determine that size. Okay. So now if I take the actual solid we've generated and have a look at the properties of it, we get our volume of 1.5 meters cubed. We're working pretty closely with the edge there. So it hasn't been done too carefully. I've really just rotated through each time like this so that I could identify that edge as I've done a 3-point polygon. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. Now let's turn this one off for a moment. I'll actually just chuck it in its own layer. Oops. I'll do it this way so that I can turn that off. I can do this again. All right. Another tool, if we've got a bit more complexity, instead of doing just a 3-point rectangle, you might find that you want a little bit more flexibility. And we could do this one called outline. Optional to give it a name. Let's say 2, and just we'll separate these so that we can compare them afterwards. Let's make this one green. Again, I can set an elevation. I'll put that right up the top. And with this one, we don't have to be quite so careful in identifying the edges because we could just go 1, 2. Oh, I want to undo last coordinate. We do have to make sure that we tap on the face of it. So that's where rotating through helps, like that. And this is what it's going to produce. It's going to be produced up at that elevation and based on these coordinate picks that we make. And we could see, say, this gets a little bit trickier on the edge of the sign here, but let's go with 1, 2, and it starts to project that. And then I'll try and find some edge there. And I'll go back this way. Grab that one. Oh, see, I've clicked through. So undo that last coordinate. Now let's grab something there. And we get this populating, showing us what this is going to look like, which makes life a lot easier. We go 1, 2. So it shows you where you've picked down here, and it shows you what's going to happen up here. And we can say close outline then. So we don't have to be as exact with the finding the edges, because we're using 2 points on each of the planes to produce this. And now I can come back to my ANZ edit, create one from polygon. I'm going to grab this polygon. I'm going to use a depth and say it's from here down to here. Let's keep it the same. Use 166 again. Still in that signs group. I'm going to call this one sign 2. It's the second time I've done this. We'll make it green. We'll go to that signs 2 layer and apply. And we've now got another one of these. And if we have a look at our properties, 1.5 meters cubic again. So even though we've changed it a little bit, overall the size of it hasn't changed too much. Now these are both really just different ways of generating that initial geometry. So instead of using a three-point rectangle or a standard rectangle, all I've done is use this outline tool. You could also just use a closed line string too. Now, what if we need something a little bit more complex? Then we probably need to start looking at this from a different direction. And what we could do, we'll go to line string. I'm not going to name these, but I'll put them into a new layer called sign 3. And let's make those nice blue. And what we're going to do is, instead of taking it from this top edge and just projecting it down, we're going to take it and project it along its length in a different direction. So this would be if it's quite a long way off vertical, or you really find that you need to achieve something with a lot more accuracy. So to make this easier on myself, I will set up a limit box as well. And I'm just going to pull that up so that I'm not dealing with the entire point cloud, because it gets a little bit frustrating sometimes to have to do that. And from here, I need a start coordinate, and we can see it's sort of peeling in that circle. So I'll go from there to there. There's my first line. Then I'll do another new one, and I'm not going to be 100% accurate, but reasonably close here. No, might just undo that last coordinate and make it go to there instead. Just onto there. That's a bit better. Okay, and then we'll go another new one. This might be easier with different background color. So you can see those two that I've set up there. We could just do one and then copy it around as well. You may find that that works better. Keeps them all perpendicular. But a little bit of trial and error. Okay. Got that top section. So now just on that bottom section. Click back over to line string. And we're going to create one from there to there. New. something from there, over there. There. And lastly, one from about to close. So let's deactivate that limit box, turn off our sign, and change that. So now we've got these strings, and we'll come back to our ANZ edit, and instead of using the 3D objects from polygons, we're going to use a 3D objects from lines. So this one's a little bit more complex. We need an extrusion control, and so it's something that really determines the direction of this, and it can be one of these lines, or if you want something else, you could also have another line here that acts as this extrusion control. Let's just chuck this into layer 0 for a moment, and we'll use you can see there. Okay, so let's say that that's our extrusion control. Interval, we're going to want this pretty small. Let's just see how it goes with that one. So we need the lines. Now let's go 1, 2, I'm just holding down control, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We want to close the ends. We don't want to include extrusion control nodes. And put it there, but we're going to call it Now, I find sometimes this doesn't always quite work the way I want it to. Let's try this again under manual. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8. There we go. So you can see this is running perpendicular. If I put that in plan view, it's running perpendicular to this. So I have to be quite careful with my extrusion control line. Otherwise, I'm not going to get enough depth through the sign. So really what I should probably do is set up, I could actually that for a moment, grab this. Let's see if that's around far enough. Let's get it to recompute. I'm going to grab these again. I've got that one as that. Manual. Okay, so you can see there that's fitting a bit better. And because it's fitting like this, it's then going to push through. And so it doesn't really matter if this sign was tipped a long way from vertical. We just have to think about how we set up that extrusion control line so that as we project this through space, it's going along in the right direction. And so now as I apply that, it goes out to the edges of that. It runs along. If we need this to do it at a tighter interval, because I've done this at 10 mil, it might be that if I just undo that, I've still got everything here. Let's go 1 mil and apply. Then it comes right out to the end of wherever it can based on all of those nodes that we have. And so it's trickier to set this one up for sure. But then here we get a slightly larger volume because we're actually getting a more accurate representation of the shape there. And then if we just grab that and let's put in a 30% transparency and we'll turn on sign 1. And we can see there, we're representing that a lot more accurately. I haven't taken too much time in digitizing, but that really gives us 3 distinct ways of doing it. We can start with 3-point rectangle. We can move to the outline tool under line string, and then we can generate multiple line strings and run the extrusion through and be able to do it that way. And really, if I was thinking about this a little bit more and I had to do more of these, then what I could potentially do if I really want something that's definitely perpendicular, let's delete that one for a moment. Let's just get back that limit box. Then if I wanted to, and go from here to here. Just remove that so that it stays at the same elevation. Let's close that. Okay. So we've got a point there. That's fine. And if I rotate this, I can get it to rotate around there. And I can say 90. Now when I put this on, I'm running exactly that way. And if I was to do the same thing with the extrusion control, I'm definitely getting something that is running in the right direction from there. So just think about this as I'm sort of doing it, that that would probably be my most accurate way of getting the direction that I require to extrude those shorter line segments along. And as I mentioned, as I was sort of working my way through, what I could also do is really just get that first one quite accurately. Let's say we go from there to there. And it might be that we want to keep it, if I would just put a question mark, it's going to keep it at the same elevation. So just push through like that. And then I actually find that this little tool down the bottom here, the CAD command tool, is quite good just for copy. And so let's take that off for a second. We're going to choose that as being into coordinate from, and this, and we'll say, we'll go to there. And that gives us a copy. And we can just keep going with that actually. So if we wanted another one there, and there, and there. So quite a few options for how to digitize this, however you feel is the best way to go. Obviously you don't need that many to get the sign. The more you add, the more accurate your volume becomes, but there's definitely a lot more work in there. And so that would then generate a nice profile coming around those corners and everything. Okay, I think that's probably enough detail for how to generate volumes for signs using these couple of tools here. And yeah, hopefully that helps, explains how to use some of these tools in a little bit of a different application in a different way.